Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
All right. Well, welcome to this week's edition of The Fourth Curtain, friends. And oh my gosh, I'm having an I'm not worthy moment today as we're joined by the incredible Bing Gordon. Bing joined Electronic Arts when it was still considered a scrappy little startup. His journey began as the marketing guy. Did anybody call you the marketing guy? This is like from your Wikipedia, too. You were the one-person marketing department, according to Wikipedia, which I kind of believe, and eventually took on the role of chief creative officer.
And so we wrote a business plan in September, October 82 and raised money from Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia in November 83, $2 million on a $3 million pre-money.
Really?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
It means the investors put in $2 million and own 40% of the company.
Oh, okay, that's a lot.
Because they could prove,
that's why Kleiner offered you a job, huh? Because you got him such a great deal.
Yeah, it's kind of a make it. No, but I was going to say the one person marketing department. My first hire named Nancy Fong, March 1st, 83. She had a nickname in the graphic arts in San Francisco as the Dragon Lady, and I almost hired her sight unseen on the recommendation of a friend, Michael John, who ran Pacific Lithograph at the time. I went on to be a great investor. He was the sixth man on the Oregon basketball team that broke Bill Walton's UCLA unbeaten streak at like 90 games. But anyway, in February, we're about to launch the first 5 games in May. And Trip Hawkins, the founder CEO, comes to me and goes, "How the manuals coming?" And I went, "Manuals?" And he goes, "Yeah, games ship with manuals." I went, "Manuals?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, yeah, they're in good shape. They'll all be done on Monday." So that weekend I wrote a bunch of manuals.
Okay, so you weren't just marketing; you were also operations and production, apparently. How many folks were at the company then? You, Trip, and how many other folks?
Let's see. In September, there were 7. And when we launched in May 83, I think there were 11.
Wow. Okay. Scrappy little startup at that
point.
But
that was back when 100,000 unit sales for a computer game was a mega hit.
Mega hit, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was going to say that run there lasted 26 years. Aaron and I just came off a run at EA. Not quite 26 years, but
no.
Congratulations
maybe it seemed like it.
Yeah, we had a studio we were never in either. Like we got the studio and then pandemic hit. So the studio was there longer than we're in it.
Yeah.
That would have been brutal. Yeah, it's so much, especially when you're creating stuff or including a company. Intuition and kind of, fly by the seat of your pants is so important. I've learned there are people who can manage at scale because they have so much attention to detail. My favorite person managing remotely is Jeff Wilke, who was CEO of Consumer at Amazon. And he just had what he called mechanisms. He introduced Jeff Bezos to the concept of mechanisms. And he could run a whole complicated business with tens of thousands of employees off of worksheets, but very few founders can. Most founders, you want them to kind of walk into a room and look around. I got to the point where I felt I could walk into a studio and walk on the floor and sense whether the game was going to be on time and whether it was going to be any good. Just kind of the vibe in the room. And by the way, the retailers that I met way before e-commerce, the great retailers all believed they could walk into their store, look around at customers in the store, and tell you what that person was going to buy before they left that day.
Huh.
That's cool. And they're in general, stuff like that, there's anecdotal evidence, a little like Nostradamus probably believed 100% of his predictions were right. Like many high ego people, they probably didn't pay attention to the wrong calls with no downside. But they did have that sense of, look at her, this can happen here. He's going to walk over. He's going to go to that demo. He's going to pick that up. I learned a lot about psychology by listening to retailers talk about the psychology of customers in the store. I was never in the casino business, but my sense is casinos figured that out a long time ago. What happens with the body language? There's a book called Competing on Analytics that talks about the Harrah Casino's first move into a VIP program where they gave people extras for basically giving them all the data about how they bet and how they drank and how they ate, how they went from table to table. Huh. And so the retailers were. So my business hero is David Ogilvy, who founded a famous ad agency, but he started out as a ne'er-do-well, which captured my attention. And then he was kind of a door-to-door salesman and then a door-to-door researcher for Roper Research. And then he became a copywriter and then a founder and then an author. And some of my favorite books he wrote on advertising and Confessions of an Advertising Man. And then the one thing he did in his career that I don't aspire to is he bought a castle in France and retired.
That sounds really cool, though.
You worked at Ogilvy, did you? Uh-oh.
That's probably my end.
What happened? Did you get a notification?
No. Just I'm in Idaho, and and Idaho's a MAGA state, so the connection only happens 98% of the time.
Well, it probably depends on what you say.
You can make America great again, but you can't make the internet great again.
Let's not go there. But you did work at Ogilvy. Is that right? Like in your early?
Yeah, I did. I went to Stanford Business School where I met Trip Hawkins, and a professor named Peter G.W. Keene taught a math class called Decision Science. And in one class, he said, we got 10 minutes to go. Let's talk about important decisions. If money were no object 5 years from now, what would you do? And we went, money were no object. We're all living on credit card credit lines.
And he goes, no.
He goes, no, you're a Stanford MBA. So in 5 years, money is going to be the least of your worries. We're going, as if. And he went around the room and asked everybody, what would you do? And a third of the people said, I'd like to take the company public on Wall Street, the biggest IPO of the year. I'm going, yeah, if money were no object. But that was their fantasy. And a third of the people said, I want to start a small business or a restaurant. And those people were all out of business 10 years later. And a third of the people had various alternative approaches. And I said, I'd like to create an adult Disneyland in virtual space. And everybody looked at me like, what? And he came up to me afterwards and said, I'm sorry that was embarrassing. I said, what do you mean embarrassing? He said, didn't you notice how awkward it seemed to everybody? I said, no, I didn't notice at all. I've been thinking about this for a while. And he said, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about. But in the other class is another kid who wants to use computers to put a Dyson card football game on a computer. You should go meet him.
Huh. Okay. That's how you met Trip, huh?
That's how I met Trip.
Okay. And then did you guys kind of go separate ways after Stanford and then reunite later?
We did it. He said, do something cool because in 5 years I'm going to start a software company. And I said, I'll be your ad agency. I was working at Intel, my second year of business school, kind of part-time. And Intel's ad agency at the time was also Apple's ad agency at the time, called Regis McKenna. He was kind of an early kind of genius helper to some of the founders. And I thought he was great at PR, but not good at advertising. I said, I could do better than that. So give me 5 years. So, Trip and I spent a lot of time together. We lived together. We did the first consumer research project ever for a cartridge video game system for the Fairchild Channel F, which was the first cartridge video game system before the Magnavox Odyssey and before the NES. And the day we walked in, and the head of marketing, Mike, head of marketing, he had to grade us. So we go in to see him at, kind of the last week of the semester with our research. And for the research, he handed us a box of postcards. Could you imagine there was a time when people bought video games and sent in postcard warranty cards just to get registered in case anything went bad. So he said, here, I got a shoebox full of postcards. You figure it out. And we sent him a survey and said, what's wrong with the system? What games do you like? And all that. So we were fired up. We go in to see him. And he says, no, I can't talk. I go, what do you mean you can't talk? You have to grade us. He goes, I can't talk. My CEO of Fairchild, Wolf Corrigan, just walked in and put a pink slip randomly on every second desk. And I have to say goodbye to half the employees. And we go, well, we got to get a grade. And he goes, give me it. And he writes A. And that's it. And he said, no, get out of here. A week later, he called us up and goes, I feel bad. Sorry, I got a new job. I'm the founding head of marketing for this little pizza video game parlor. And so I'm sending you a bunch of credits for Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese. Hey, that's Nolan. We had Nolan on a couple of years ago. That's amazing. Such a small world.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't think I.
Nolan was already a grown up when we were kids. So he's a generation ahead.
He was on his second career then, but Chuck E. Cheese.
That was after.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I didn't get halfway through your intro. I'm just going to bail on it because I don't think we'll ever get all the way through. When did games come on your radar? Like, so you're acting, you get out of Yale, you're B school, you make Trip, then you're in advertising. Was games part of?
No, when I was a kid,
was it after?
I just went to the Masters with my brother, and we talked about this. He was my best friend growing up, and it was from him I learned about love. And we played one-on-one sports. We made up games all the time. We made up weird home run derby, and we made up slow motion football, and we played 2-on-1 football. We just made up game after game after game. And then he said, well, Bing, you did a lot of puzzles and played cards, but there was a guy in our neighborhood named Greg Oxford who was a bookshelf game guy, a hex game guy, and those were always too complicated for me. So I didn't get into those. I get into all other kinds of game-like things, and I got into I got fascinated with games because of virtual worlds. I worked my summer out of high school at Disneyland, and they used to do intramural sports, all these bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kids about to go to college and in college. And we did intramural sports before the park opened. And I would see the audio, and we'd do canoe races around Tom Sawyer Island, and I'd see the audio animatronics like Abraham Lincoln on Main Street, and imagine, if I would have gotten here a few hours earlier, I wonder if they'd get up off their pedestal and wander around. That would be so cool. And of course, that idea later became a movie and a TV show and another movie. So the idea of I realized later, I've thought about death almost since I could remember. And, we're in this one life, but life is serial. I think we're living life like a tape drive. And I want to live like I have a hard drive, or better yet, with flash memory. I want to save and restore, and I want multiple tracks going on. So to me, the idea of captured in the brand name Second Life, but virtual worlds is you can save or restore, try stuff out. You can compress time, you can elongate time, and set up simulations as you go. So that was the draw for me. I just wanted to live multiple lives in my 100 years. And people now call it the metaverse, but for me, books was a metaverse. Theater was a metaverse. Watching TV, I was a TV generation. Watching TV was a metaverse, and any one of these worlds that in your mind you're inhabiting and either following along as a spectator. Steven Spielberg was interesting. We worked with him when he first started trying to do video games, and he was fascinated. He said, "Movies, we make movies to wash over you. It's a hot medium, but you sit back. And TV is a cold medium, and you sit back. But video game is a hot medium, and you're leaning in." And that fascinated him. Of basically watching the people, the players, the audience. He was less interested in game mechanics, but he was really interested in what it did to the players. And Spielberg, interestingly enough, has a formula for every movie he did. He just said he's got a beat chart where every movie, the same beat happens the same minute. And he said something that he talked about quality, and he kind of an offhand joke said, banning smoking from movie theaters is the worst thing that ever happened to Hollywood. We go, what? That's okay. Unpack that one, Steve. Yes. And he goes, here's what happened. I'd go into a preview house and I'd be watching my cut of a movie. And if one person got up to get a smoke, I'd feel disappointed. 3 people got up to get a smoke. At the moment they did it, I needed to recut the movie. And he said, there's something like, and I said, now what do you do? And he says, well, now we have infrared cameras and we watch for fidgets. And he said, there's something like 51 body languages that people make in movie theaters when they're bored. But it's just not as compelling as seeing somebody stand up and walk out of the theater.
That's
that was his quant. That was were his KPIs.
Simple. Yes.
Okay. All right.
In the world for the last 15 years, the KPIs we've had people connected to servers, and we can actually see stuff going on. But the great artist of the past did it by watching body language. So Steven Spielberg did in a movie theater. The guy, John Sullivan, the buyer at Toys R Us, when Toys R Us was the leading vendor of video games around the world, he did it by walking in the store.
Right. And now Amazon does it by all sorts of digital KPIs. Incredible.
It's become a little more of a science that once was a craft. You guys both reach for the drink at exactly the same time. I don't know if that's a stand up for a smoke thing. It's like, we come to an end of that chapter. Let's both take a drink.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about electronic arts. And we have to talk about your investment career too. That was the other half of the intro. There's this list of household names that you've been involved in that just boggles my mind. But before we get to that, EA. So EA, 26 years, eventually chief creative. What is chief creative officer at EA?
Well, I made up the title. And at the time, the internet was nascent, but I haven't found the use of chief creative officer any time before kind of 95. That turned out to be a non-operating role after operating in marketing and then trying to run studio for a while and getting not being able to reverse engineer the lives of engineers. But after doing that, so my job as chief creative officer was for about 10 games a year, make them 5% better. So we did a guy named Mike Mazer did the analytics on this, but it turned out for about 10 years in the video game business, Metacritic for video games was a much better measure of quality score than Rotten Tomatoes is in the movie business, for example. And the book and music business, the review scores don't matter at all. But in the movie business, there are very few 90s on Rotten Tomatoes that become box office hits. The exceptions are Godfather 1 and 2 and Pixar movies. And, and the reason is Pauline Kael didn't have popular taste. In the movie business, the critics became artsy fartsy, and what people liked and what critics liked didn't match. But in games, they matched. And what we found in games for about a decade is after a game got to an 80 Metacritic, every 5 percentage points Metacritic would increase sales 50 to 100%. So my job was to add 5%. And we didn't know it at the time. It was kind of intuitive. But, and then from a marketing point of view, sometimes you add the 5% by working from the customer backwards, by helping them to see what they expect to see. It's kind of the setup. And sometimes, an example of that was we did a game called NASCAR racing. And the year before that, we'd done a game called Andretti. And so really, we took the NASCAR license and we wanted to get out in a year. So took the Andretti engine and put NASCAR on it with brands on all the cars and everything. And then suddenly you're always making left turns. And we went and showed it to reviewers. I was a big fan of showing stuff to reviewers. And they went, "You fucking assholes. This is a repackage. You put a couple logos on it." And I go, "Well, no, actually, there's some new physics and some new engineering." And they go, yeah, you suck. I said, "Okay, give us a week." And so we went back.
Give us a week. We won't suck next week.
and I have a concept I call menu toys. And so we went back and said, "What's unique about the game?" And the engineering team said, "Well, we built in draft. And the way it works. I know it better in cycling. In cycling, if you're at kind of over about 18 miles an hour, if you have a perfect draft, you can keep speed at 27% less energy. 27. So you can get the speed at 27 or less watts. And I think you can see that in NASCAR when you're going around and somebody can slingshot because they've got the free ride. And his guy said, "Well, this is it. We built this in." I go, "Well, we just showed it to people. Nobody sees it." And they go, "But it's in there." I go, "Oh, this is new." So we invented something called a draft meter. It's in the lower right-hand corner, and it's for anybody who ever played The Sims. It's kind of the Sims puck was in the lower left. That was a late invention. And the draft meter in the lower right, all it showed was kind of 0 to 100% of, it looked like a vacuum up to the perfect vacuum. And if you had it right at the top, you had the best possible vacuum to get speed with. So now you're playing the game and, you're looking at the car and you're playing the control on it, but you're looking at the draft meter the whole time. And went back and showed, okay, we put the new engine in and the reviewers go, "But this is awesome." This is NASCAR.
Which year was that one? 2003? No? Or before that?
Yeah, it's look upable. Well, I'm pretty sure it was on PlayStation. So it could have been earlier than that.
Okay, so that's positioning. That's like basically, hey,
I'm
going to calibrate your expectations here.
Yeah, it's already in there. If you can, if you find it, you're going to love it. But we want to make sure you see it. There's sometimes in marketing, you want to let people discover stuff. I'm a big fan of doing that with logos and brands. Make your logo smaller than anybody thinks it should, to make people lean in a little bit. Be modest about your logo. And similarly, we found out a long time ago that that brands that said they were quality, you say my brand is quality, what it means to the customer is you're cheap. And so we did this with Electronic Arts. It's why don't we make the logo bigger? Well, we want people to feel like they're discovering us. And when people discover you, they're more feel discovery. They're more likely to talk about it to their friends. I don't know how we got into this. Pardon?
Is that too big?
Well, it depends how close you get to it. No, I think something about the size of a chyron, on the bottom of the screen, it's modest enough. But anyway, then there's other stuff you want to make sure that people see. And, we wanted to make sure that people appreciated the engineering in here. And, we did the same thing with The Sims. Lucy Bradshaw and I were trying to take it to market. And we thought, well, this positioned as a doll simulator, but it's actually a story maker. And so we changed the menu system and put a camera icon on it. So, if you look around, it's hard not to see it. And in Sims 2, we did a wants and fears meter and went even further and made it look like a slot machine with the first. So you can't ignore it. So there's some stuff you want to make sure that people don't ignore, and then there's other times you really want people to lean in. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's judgment about when is right. Usually you do one or the other, and you watch how the audience reacts. But
I was gonna ask, like, how did 10? You described it as 10 projects a year, 5% better, but I'm assuming you're not on any of these development teams that are making these 10 games. You were one step outside of the studio, and you're kind of saying, hey, you should add a meter for that. Like, how did that go?
I learned a long time ago, I like influence more than power. And I found out in my career, I keep track of my business and product catastrophes. And in the first part of my career, my catastrophes usually came from taking shortcuts. So an example of that, we did a sequel to Dr. J and Larry Bird One-on-One. And it was Jordan and Irving One-on-One. And I took a shortcut, and I didn't mock up the package and show it to people. And we made that package, instead of it looking like two famous guys down at a school playground, this looked a little more Hollywood against a big red background, and just took for granted, how bad could it be? Well, what I found out with sequels, people's instinct is it can't do worse than half of the last time. And no, the answer is it can do 0. And so I've had a couple zeros. So this game, the first time we went to a consumer show back when there were consumer video game shows, and a little retailer had our game boxes on a card table, and I went over to watch what was happening. I was so proud there was our game, and watched about 5 people in a row touch the game to the left, go across ours, and pick up the other red package next to it, which was Tetris. And I thought, after about 5 of those in a row, it's like, oh crap. And that was a total goose egg. That was a 0. Another one, we did a sequel to a game, a Conquistador game, which has actually an inspiration for SimCity. It was called 7 Cities of Gold by Danny Bunton and Ozark Softscape. Mm-hmm. And that was awesome. That had so much technology, and it started out with randomly generating tectonic plates and building a new world out of that. So in the game, if you headed west from Spain, you didn't know what you were going to find. And of course, sometimes you could go due west and not find Haiti. You'd find nothing but open ocean, and then get scurvy and run out of food and die. And so Danny did a sequel to that called Heart of Africa, and this was Dr. Livingstone, I presume, and it's some of the same thing. You start out heading down the Nile, you're trying to find the source of the Nile, and that sold, I think, 3 copies in the U.S. in the first month, and but it turned out it was top 5 in Germany. And it's like, oh, guess what? Germans cared a lot about dominating Africa. Nobody in America at the time, no video gamers in America in the 80s cared about Africa. And it was fine. It was find outable. And so this is a long answer to your question. In the second half of my career, my catastrophes usually was when I couldn't convince other people of the right answer.
Okay.
And
is that on you or is that on them?
It's on me. I think it's my fault when I generate so much conversation that many people, they can tell that my ideas are at one end of the bell curve. They just can't tell which. And so sometimes, this is before we've already got on, I said, learned in management, you got to say things 3 times before people think you mean it. I had to propose to my wife 11 times before she said yes. So that was more than 3.
No, persistence. That's one of the 3 key qualities for success. So you got that.
So what I learned early on, with game developers, the first thing to get them to listen to you is play their game. And in games, it's kind of interesting because they can see what your score is this month. So, I think I'm on a 1,700-day Duolingo streak, and I think I was on a 5-year Farmville streak and a 5-year Words with Friends streak. And, they're coming in to meet them. And just like somebody can listen to your last podcast, show up and go, you guys have game or not? Somebody can go, hey, Bing, we like your opinion and all that, but where have you been lately? And I can say, well, your game bored me. And they kind of go, yeah, well, you told me that last time. So, but there is, I don't know, anybody who's a parent, you learn this as well. There's, I think girls up to about age 7 and boys up to about age 4 believe in their parents as authority figures, at least with games. We used to think girls would play the games parents bought them up to about age 8 and boys up to about age 4. And, there's an art form to get listened to. And, I never really was the great Santini, which is, do what I say, not do what I do. And, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun to get in there and see how the creative people think, and see how it was fun with Peter Molyneux, where his ideas come from, and it was fun with Demis Hassabis, where do his mechanics come from, and Sid and Will and Brian Reynolds and Matrick and Hanno Lemke, where all these and Neil Young, where they it's kind of after a couple of beers, where your ideas coming from here, what are you frustrated about?
Hey, with the beers, was that about Neil in particular, or is that all that whole group?
Well, I do have in business. I try to tell people that. Drink 2 beers fast and now tell me what your business strategy is.
Let's do it, dude. And we'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest non-profit, member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people, great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the 4th Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
And you know, you get rid of all the long-winded stuff. Yeah. And by the way, I tell people if you're doing marketing, be a door-to-door salesman. Have somebody else sit beside the door, knock on the door, try to get them to let you in your house. You can only use your marketing words, and see how that goes. And set on strategy, it's either 2-beer strategy or 6-inch strategy. The 6-inch strategy is get your face 6 inches from the other person's nose and tell them what your business is. And you get really succinct really fast. And I think every Fuller Brush salesman in history, you know, they learned how do you get the door open. And, you know, at the worst, they'd come in with the bag of dirt to throw it on the house owner's floor and go, I can clean this up for you. And hope the cops don't get called. But, you know, when you're trying to get people to get on this, you kind of need a good one-liner. It's like, we do a podcast. We've been doing it a while. I don't know. We're kind of guys. It's like, hey, Frank Jabot thinks we're awesome. So you're in the door. And, you know, but if you said, here's a 150-page thesis written by two MIT PhDs about why podcasting, podcast participation can increase your health span. And
we better get rid of that doc.
Yeah, I was just working on it this morning.
And if you go, hey, did you know Peter Attia says podcasts will give you a golden decade? It's like, okay, if somebody's a Peter Attia fan, they might go, okay, I better try that. It's cheaper than subscribing to a health doctor.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So when do you want to start? When do you want to start this interview?
I'm going to ask you a question
you
about
got
venture.
So I have a question. When you guys stop and you're by yourself, do you ever just say, "Let's practice laughing"? We got to make sure our laughs. We got to make sure our laughs are good enough.
Does it sound like we practice? Because I'm taking that as a compliment.
Yeah, you got a sound guy saying, "A little more, Aaron. Come on, a little more, Aaron. Alex, bring it up a little bit. Bring it up a little more timber, Aaron. Come on. You want people to laugh with you, not feel slightly humored."
That's right. I've learned to lean back when I really laugh, because otherwise it's a little too it's too loud. It's too offensive.
I can't know if it's all right, bro. Stop laughing. It's too loud. Or it's like, do it some more. I can't.
Well, do you ever notice how singers can sometimes they eat the mic? I mean, they do this thing. They, it's just amazing. I was just at the Masters golf tournament, and seeing what the pros can do, seeing what pros can do in music, what they can do in acting, what they can do in game design. It's kind of otherworldly. Yeah.
Don't look at this performance right here as podcast hosts as any indication of what the pros can do.
You're just trying to. The pros at Augusta only hit the fairway 67% of the time.
Huh? Really?
And they're all playing at par.
Yeah, I did read that everyone in the field, including the qualifiers, get prize money. 25K is the minimum, even for the qualifying group at Augusta.
That'd probably pay their airfare.
Maybe. They probably bring a crew. Yeah.
The Augusta National Golf Course is a private course, does not charge the U.S. TV network a fee for broadcasting. They let them do it free.
Really? I did you get a pimento sandwich? I heard they were only
$1.50. I did get a pimento sandwich, and they're only $1.50.
Incredible. Okay,
but what's really good there, the pimento sandwich, I don't know if you like cream cheese maybe, but what's good, they have a beer that you can only get there called Crow's Nest, which is named after their second story on their clubhouse. That's a great beer. Crow's Nest.
Where is this at? The Masters?
At the Augusta National. I think you can only get that beer on the grounds.
Bing, next year, if you would, I would accompany you to the Masters, drink 2 of those beers, and tell you my business pitch. Hey, then you can kick me out. I'll go for the beers.
Well, I've been drinking beer this whole time, so I think I can tell
this whole time. Okay. All right. I want to list some of the companies, that you've been involved with, because I read this list, and this isn't even the whole list. This is just a sampling of the list. It includes, and these are businesses that you've invested in or been an advisor to, and some of these you're on the board or were on the board. But it includes Duolingo. You mentioned Duolingo already. I use it. Audible. I use it pretty much every day. Magic Leap. Never used it. Zazzle. All the time. Niantic. Almost daily. Zynga. Almost daily. Spotify. Daily. Take-Two. Almost daily. And Amazon. Maybe hourly. So that group of companies have had a huge impact on me. You were on the board of Amazon for what, 14 years ish?
Yeah, and then another 6 years as a board observer, and I did that so that they could pay me to spend more time with management.
Okay, I basically have 2 sort of questions on that whole bit. Question 1 is what's it like? Like, you're on a board, like you're on the board at Amazon. You go to a board meeting. What is a board meeting for a Fortune 5? I've never been in a Fortune 500 company board meeting. What's it like? Is it like Succession?
Well, let's see. There's two kinds of boards. There's the boards where the CEO wants to stay out of trouble. And there's the boards where the CEO wants expensive consulting. And because, your board is about the most expensive consultants you can get. But many CEOs think of their board as kind of adult supervision. It's kind of take you out behind the woodpile, and that's kind of a rookie move. But I do think in corporate boards, companies go astray when the boards don't ask hard questions. I worked at Intel a little while, and Intel, probably the board didn't do the right thing with Uber. I think that's understandable, but Travis became unmanageable. It is hard as a board member when a founder raises more money than you think they're worth. You kind of lose your moral authority. But my metric for a board is one valuable idea received by the management team per hour of a board meeting. And I could move out of the sun slightly.
You got some nice afternoon sun coming in.
Yeah,
and a cool football stove.
And Amazon got to a point where the board book would end up being kind of 10 hours to read twice and get your list of questions together because it was so densely detailed. And we hate board meetings that are just show and tell. And you can tell when it's, the sins of a board is show and tell, kind of death by PowerPoint. And sometimes CEOs will use the board to kind of reward their direct reports, make them feel like you get to talk to the board. And the board sees that coming from a mile away. And those meetings are also not very interesting. So the right way to run a board is at the end of the board meeting, management and the directors all feel energized. And, it's hard to feel energized if somebody's droning on. If you remember a TV show called The Wonder Years, and they have this droning middle school teacher. And it reminded me of my own middle school where, you're sitting there and you're just trying to stay awake and you look at the clock and then, you count to 1,000 and you try to do word games in your head and, you count all the branches on the tree outside the window and you look at the clock again and 1 minute has passed. And so there are some board meetings like that. I'm on the board of a company called Truecaller in Sweden. And the board meetings were pretty interesting because the founders, Alan and Nami, they would ask pushy questions and actually upbraid the board if the board would have private conversations. And then I'd tell them kind of as the chairman afterwards, well, here's what everyone's really thinking. And they come in the next meeting and say, why didn't you just say that to us when we were here? You wasted our time. But in the annual shareholder meeting by Swedish law, the whole meeting has to be done in Swedish. So imagine the experience of being chairman of the board, sitting on the dais down in front, for 2 hours while everything is in Swedish. And
you don't speak Swedish, I'm guessing.
I don't hear it either. And
only Swedish I know is from the Muppet Show, and I don't think that's real Swedish.
And that I don't know. Nobody asked. Yeah, I can say Swedish meatballs. That's about it. But I didn't know that this was going to be the case, so I didn't do any Duolingo in advance.
Nobody warned you.
What language do you do on Duolingo?
I'm on Spanish. I just started chess. They just started a new chess line, which I saw it a few months ago. I think it's great. And
wait, chess like the game chess?
Yeah. They just started doing chess, and I think it's probably maybe it's beta. It's limited.
My kids have it. Play it too.
I do. Because I'm on a board in Paris now, and I do French for a week before going over just to get used to the accent. But Spanish, I'm at like 1,700 days. And I do math. I like the math. The math are all actually the math I could all do in my head, but I kind of like one to keep my streak going. But also it's kind of this 5-minute brain teaser. And for me, the math isn't what's hard. What's hard is making sure that I don't misunderstand the problem presentation.
Interesting.
The times when I screw up by adding when I should have subtracted, it's like even at 99, I'd like to be 99.9% do what I intended to do. And every now and then you get wrong. In Duolingo, I think I've sent Luis Bonan 5 times a screenshot and said, "Is this a bug?" And every time he go, 4 out of the 5 times he said, "No, Bing, you suck." in so many words. And then one time he said, "Oh yeah, that's a bug." So
okay,
there you go.
Yeah.
There's your one good idea per hour. You earned your board seat right there. All right.
There's another question about investing, which is, how do you decide who's a founder who's going to go the distance? And everybody talks about it and nobody knows. And it's a little like, if you're a sports fan, first round draft choices, it's only like 3 to 5% ever make the Hall of Fame. And I love the Athletic or Bleacher Report. They go back and do a redraft, and you see even 2 years later how many people got drafted wrong. And I worked with one company that used to count what percent of their summer hires were offered full-time jobs, and the ones that weren't are considered failures. So, you think that, maybe you have a 20% failure rate, which is probably about, coming out of college, probably 20% of the people you hire 2 years later, you wish you hadn't. My sense is 50% of the execs you hire into a company 2 years later, you wish you hadn't. So even with founders, their Series A is done, and 50% of the founders who get Series A's don't make it to 100 million in revenue, which is kind of a good first step. And I've heard all sorts of theories. Some people say, founders. Andy Jassy says it's all about learning skills and meta skills about learning. I think Mamoon Hamid at Kleiner would say it's all about resiliency, and Ilya Fushman at Kleiner really likes the attention to data. But even there's this book called In Search of Excellence. That was a famous book in the 90s, and they mentioned 10 companies, and 10 years later, 5 of them look crappy. So it is. I think
so it's hard to predict.
The wisdom about founders is at a seed level, the founders are the most important part of the investment, and at about a C level, the numbers are the most important, and in between, who knows. And what I discovered is, and I tell founders when you're going to pitch for money, when you leave the room, the first question asked, did you like the founders? And it's kind of like that 5% extra quality. If the founders are great, you can always get your money back because somebody will want to hire them. And if the founders are great, they're going to get more press. They're going to recruit better, whether they can build a business or not. And
is that kind of like what you look at? You look at what you think of the founders? Is that kind of like sort of primary?
Yeah. I found that I really like founders who give me an insight about their business or customer I've never heard before. My favorite was Jen Hyman, the founder of Rent the Runway. She said, we're in the compliments business. We go, what? She says, no, here's the deal. Our sweet spot is the wedding years, kind of 27 to 32 in America. And women in those years have something like about 10 events per year. And now in social media era, they all get photos taken. In the old days, they'd have one dress and they'd re-accessorize, but you wear a black dress 10 times. And in the modern days, you wear the same dress. Here's what happens. You get a half a compliment per event. When you rent the runway, you get 11 compliments per event.
Mm.
So we're in the compliments business. I go, holy crap, that's such a good insight.
Yeah, powerful.
So, founders, you want founders to have a unique knack one way or another. Somebody like Daniel Ek, by the time he did Spotify, I think it was his third or fourth company. And he started doing companies at teenage years. Sometimes founders, I'm involved with a company called Tacta, which is hand robotics. And they previously did a Genius, 4X Brighter LCD that they sold to Apple. And so, imagined it, engineered it, built it, monetized it, exited.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it's, people are successful once. Did you learn the right lesson or the wrong lesson? Are you still hungry?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys can even tell there's days where you go, oh, crap, we've got to do this again. We better get somebody interesting because we're kind of bored with ourselves.
Never.
Take a drink, Alex.
Never. All right. I got one. We've kept you kind of long. I don't know if you're still good on time. I had one question, one last question, I guess.
Can I ask a question too, actually, before you ask your last question?
Okay,
so your last
two
point,
questions.
2 questions. I'll be quick. This one. So, you know how sometimes you have like a person that has or a company that has a product, but the product, it doesn't like sell or it doesn't pick up, but it's still like a genius thing, Is that something that you think you could see? Like, oh man, if enough people saw this, like what is that perspective there? Because I feel
one thing is in the world of creativity, all the way back to Michelangelo, half the job was finding a path to money. And at an extreme, there's an artist named Jeff Koons. His father was a door-to-door salesman. I think that guy could sell ice cubes to Eskimos. And he happens to get into art, which is a better business than selling igloos. So the first Game Developers Conference, it was Chris Crawford and about 80 developers complaining that retailers didn't do a good enough job selling their games. I'm going, you understand, retailers don't feel responsible. The retailers aren't even going to pay you until it sells. So they think they're renting you space. And so that's kind of the first thing is David Ogilvy says it isn't genius if it doesn't sell. It isn't creative if it doesn't sell. So there is, but again, if it's going to sell, it sells better if it's higher quality. So that's back to, if it's not 80% these days, caveat emptor, but at 80% now, genius matters. So is it hard work or genius that gets it at 80%? I don't know, but I think it is hard work and genius that gets past the 80%. It's Steve Jobs kind of insanely great, or Elon Musk getting people to work, getting aeronautics engineers to work 100-hour weeks. Or Thomas Edison saying genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. So I did have a discussion with somebody working in an AI app lately, and I said, he said, hundreds of people using this are using it hundreds of hours. And I go, I've had this disaster experience before when I've been generally right and specifically wrong. and to some degree, that just means you're doing market research for somebody else who's going to get it exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And Electronic Arts, really early on, we bought a company and a product that I named Get Organized, which is an integrated productivity app. And I did my homework. I showed it in focus groups to people, and they said, "I love this. I want this so badly." Whatever. It's kind of a mail list manager and a database and a word processor. I want this so bad. This is before Excel 1, 2, 3, and I want this so badly. And the day it launched, a crappy little company called Borland brought out something called Sidekick, which was a hacked together organizer that some of their engineers had done to keep track of their calendar. And I think that thing outsold our Get Organized maybe 1,000 to 1. And so and I went back to some of these people and said, "You said you wanted this." They said, "Yeah, I told you I wanted this." And so we were generally right. Integrated productivity app to save time, but it didn't have quite the fit and finish of Sidekick, which just was hacked together by some engineers who then use it for 6 months.
Right. That's a sort of make. Yeah, that's
generally right. Generally right and specifically wrong.
Yeah,
you're doing market research for somebody else.
I love that phrase. It's like ideas
are
cheap.
By the way, it's like if you wear an Aura ring, I wear a Garmin watch, but Aura is specifically right. The first company that did the sensor wearable ring was called Motive. Kleiner invested. It turned out customers didn't like it. It had all the same stuff. The app didn't have the same fit and finish. The ring was a little too big on the finger. It was kind of horsey how they sent you the ring finder, and then they sold their IP to a company called Proxy, and then Proxy sold it to Aura, or Aura bought Proxy. So Aura, and you think about the fitness bands. Now it's Whoop. And Whoop came after Fitbit and Jawbone. I worked with Jawbone. Remember, Jawbone, generally right, had like a 95% D30 usability, but it was manufactured so when you twisted it, the electronics broke. So they had a mean time between failure of about 90 days, which eventually killed that company. Fitbit kind of survived, but Whoop's got a better app, but also they charge a subscription. It turns out subscription and a slightly better app and the same data as the winning approach. So generally right and specifically wrong. So anyway, so that's the question of it's genius, but it doesn't sell. Go read David Ogilvy. It's not great if it doesn't sell.
I know, I love that.
And David Ogilvy learned as a door-to-door salesman. All U.S. advertising all started out as door-to-door sales.
Incredible.
Maybe religion did too. The Jehovah's Witness. I don't know if Christianity started out as door-to-door salespeople, but certainly if somebody came up to you and said, "I could turn your water into wine," you'd let him into the house. "Sure, Jesus, come on and show me what you got." The product management of Christianity, starting out with door-to-door sales of turning water into wine.
Yeah, miracles.
All right, I had one other.
We've gone long.
We've gone long.
That's all right. But just cut out every other sentence, and it'll still make as much sense. Well, there's two of you. You can do every question that one of you asked. Do one, and this is Aaron's take.
Make it a two-parter. The venture business and the games business. I didn't realize this until I was specifically reading about you, because you've had basically 2 careers in each industry, but they have some similarities. Basically,
they're both hits businesses.
Hits businesses, and kind of been around since the 70s, so relatively new careers.
And now that, But that the magnitude of hits in both are bigger than anybody ever imagined. I think in the 99 internet era, there were $5 billion tech companies, which we now call unicorns. I think in the last decade, there's something like 2,500 or something like that. There's $1 trillion companies right now, $1 trillion value, multi-trillion dollar companies right now, or $1 billion valuation. I don't think BlackBerry ever got valued at $1 billion. And so in games, in the music business, before Saturday Night Fever, albums only sold 1 million copies. That was kind of the ultimate. And Saturday Night Fever with the Bee Gees went to 10 million. And, now we have games like Grand Theft Auto that are doing, 25 to 50 million. I think Pokemon Go peaked at about 130 million DAUs. Farmville peaked at 32 million DAUs. I mean, these, to somebody who started out at 100,000 was the gold standard. We wrote the electronics business plan. We said someday there's going to be some million unit sellers, and it was like, yeah, sure. And the first time, and you can kind of do that with math and all that. But the first time I was carrying an EA Sports briefcase or something, and I got in a cab in New York, and the cabbie looks at me and goes, EA Sports, it's in the game. I go, yes. that's we've reached a mass audience.
Yes.
So there's a million, and there's a New York cabbie telling you your slogan.
That's the way. That's a much better KPI right there. But does this growth continue forever, or like? I was just been thinking about the games industry, where it is today, just the trajectory, how we've had so much growth, like in geographies and in age, like just you don't grow up without playing games today, which is different. My generation, my parents' generation, different. Like are we getting to some sort of like maturity, like like you're talking like the music business or the film business?
Well, there's the hours of game time. I think for years, the hours of TV time in the U.S., the average U.S. household had the TV on 7 hours a day. Do you guys look at your phone screen time? Wouldn't you feel happy? Wouldn't you feel happy with yourself if you took your phone time and your compute time and you got it down to 7 hours a day? So
I never get anything done.
we keep manufacturing time. One of the ways you do it with music. In the 90s, I used to go out and we'd talk to customers and we'd ask, how many hours of media do you use? And what we found is people were doing 40 to 50 hours of media per week for a decade, but the total hours spent would stay the same, but the number of hours of media would grow. So you would multitask. I think people play mobile games multitaskable. They certainly do TikTok multitaskable. They do Twitch multitaskable. So TV, which used to be, you'd either watch TV or you'd watch TV and do your ironing at the same time, but it wasn't a whole lot of multitasking. And I think screen entertainment now is highly multitaskable. Music's highly multitaskable. Books aren't multitaskable. Text is multitaskable, quick switch. And I haven't seen any data on this, but my instinct is that humans read probably 50% more words now than they ever used to, maybe even, but they don't buy more books. And I think people watch more video now than back in the TV era, because that was 7 hours per household, probably 5 hours per person. So there's more screen time. But it's UGC, it's TikTok and it's Instagram. And it's not just Hollywood. And in games, we've had amazing growth in AAA games. to see some of these top games again reaching 50 million people, that's kind of astonishing. But the mobile games are even bigger, and that's astonishing. And then I like gamification outside of games, something like Duolingo. So when people ask, what am I playing? I include Duolingo in that. And I think there's going to be, we're going to be gaming outside core gaming, just as we're videoing outside of going to movie theaters and watching TV. I think there's probably a limit to the number. I think it's very difficult to get past 40 to 50 hours of media per week of elapsed time, but you can cram more stuff into it. And I'd say in mobile, the surprise of mobile is, it added up kind of 1.5 billion players, but originally it added 1.5 billion players at a penny to 2 pennies an hour. And over about 10 to 15 years, we got that up to 20 cents. The flip side is the AAA business and the movie business gone the other direction. Netflix right now monetizes at about the same as 24/7 cable TV in the US. So, cable TV has a lot of bad hours in there and a lot of bad junk. So they've kind of, where the movie business in theaters used to be $3 an hour, Blockbuster used to be, $2 to $2.50 an hour, and now Netflix makes it 18 cents an hour. And, record albums used to be, $10, and then iTunes took it to 99 cents, and Spotify. The music that you listen to is probably cheaper now than it ever was. So I'm a big fan of what I call remonetizing the creative class, and it's merch, live performance, and fan clubs. And so the AAA game business, the movie business, the TV business has not yet figured out analog pricing. The TV business kind of did with advertising, but the rest of the TV business hasn't figured it out. And it just turns out the same hour has different value to different people. And so anybody who sells their product at one price for everybody, even the books. Here's the big innovation was paperbacks. So, paperbacks took books from, kind of $3 an hour to about $1 an hour. Well, think about 300 page takes 5 hours to read. A paperback costs you $9. Hardback costs $25. So $5 an hour for the paperback, and $1.80 for the hardcover, $1.80 for the paperback. And Kindle probably makes that a little bit less expensive. Interesting podcasts have figured out how to get monetized. I don't know if you have subscribers, but
I'll
Michael
send you our
Lewis
Patreon link, Bing. I'll send you our
Patreon.
Oh,
everything. I saw you had Patreon on the thing. I didn't know. Jack Conte is a pretty interesting character.
That's a really fascinating. Yeah.
And Zynga does this with VIPs. So, the people that figured out the VIPs are casinos.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
And, maybe some presidential families.
This guy's right in the edge, man.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Well, thanks for having me. I look forward to doing an interview sometime.
We kept you way long.
There's a whole other topic about. Let's talk about how this game got designed, how that game got designed, and how this product got designed. And very few historians create an accurate "you are there." They tend to have a backward-looking bias. So,
yeah. All right. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. We used up your late afternoon sunshine But we very much
Sure.
appreciate
Where are
it.
you right now? What city?
I'm in Ketchum, Idaho, Sun Valley, Idaho.
Oh, Idaho, right. You said that earlier. Okay, cool.
It's my last day of winter, so I'm heading back to California tomorrow.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
good for you. Good for you. But thanks again. And we'll see you around. What a thrill.
thanks for
What a
coming
thrill
on,
to
Dan.
get to meet and chat with you.
Nice meeting you, and
Some
happy
great
to laugh
stories.
in your ears as loud as
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media. Lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Production support by May Lee with community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.